point out that the sun shines down its power to all the world and makes the wind blow strong as it will. I wonder how gentle rains can fall upon the land, so lovely earth can stay lovely still. Welcome to the 513th edition of Energy Week with George Harvey and Tom Fennell. As usual of late, Tom is not in the studio with me, but he is on the phone.
In the flesh.
He's on the flesh in his home with his cat. Okay. The material that we're talking about is stuff that comes from my blog. We're starting on the 2nd of March, Thursday, and if you go to geoharvey.com, geoharvey.com, you can find it by clicking on the date there, or you can go down on the scroll down, and you'll find a file to load or a link to a file, that website that has all the materials for this week, including the pictures.
Well, some of these links lead to good sources. They're worth pursuing if you got the time.
Yeah, absolutely worth pursuing. So I'm going to put the first picture up.
It looks like a field full of Yeller.
It's Yeller. It's wasn't there a movie called Old Yeller?
There was. It was about a dog.
It was about a dog. Yeah. I remember that from when I was a kid. This particular item is from Renews. That field looks like it's full of canola to me.
Could be. I was wondering what it is. It's certainly a yellow plant.
Yeah, it's very yellow.
Canola is yellow, and they would do something like having wind turbines in a canola field.
Well, why not?
Yeah,
okay.
Right.
This is from Renews. What do you got for a title, Tom?
Renewables help limit 2020. Whoops, I'm reading it wrong. Renewables help limit 2922.
29? 2022, Tom.
Yes, 2022.
Okay.
CO2 emissions to 1%.
Global energy-related CO2 emissions rose by under 1% in 2022, less than initially feared, as the growth of solar, wind, and electric vehicles, heat pumps, and energy efficiency helped limit the impacts of an increased use of coal and oil amid the global energy crisis.
Yes, we're moving in the right direction.
Well, yeah, moving in the right direction means that we'd be cutting emissions, not increasing it by 1%. But this is a whole lot better than what they had thought would happen. We had an energy crisis, and people were expecting much larger increase in emissions.
That's why I say 1% is progress.
1% is, yes, it's in that sense, it's progress. You got more on that?
Well, let's see. EV heat pumps and energy efficiency.
Yes.
Helps limit the impacts of increased use of coal and oil.
Yes. Yes. Okay, we should probably move on to the next piece, which is from the National Parks Traveler. We have a picture of the Yosemite. Isn't that what you said it was, Tom?
I think I said it was Yosemite. Yep.
Yeah. There are people who claim that this is called Yosemite, but you know, you have to humor people who are like that.
Looks like a pretty spot in any case.
Yeah, it is. Except one of the things that I notice in this, particularly on the left in the lower quadrant, but elsewhere in the picture, you see a lot of dead trees, and so anyway, what have you got for a title?
Some Sierra Nevada forests are being stranded by climate change.
Yeah. Iconic forests that stretch across Kings Canyon, Sequoia, and Yosemite National Parks, I'll just say it that way because that's what people expect, are beginning to fray at the edges as the warming climate is creating unsuitable growing conditions for them, according to a study led by Stanford University researchers.
This is an interesting development, isn't it?
Well, yeah, and what's happening is that a lot of plants and animals are moving into higher areas on these mountains because the lower areas are too warm for them. And of course, there's a limit to how high you can get on these things and be in a livable area. So this is difficult for a lot of little creatures and plants.
Well, it's a learning curve, you know.
I suppose, but you know, they're worried about the creatures not having a place to live. That's kind of rough.
Yeah, they don't read the newspapers.
I suppose they could move to northern Canada or wherever, but they don't know about that. Okay, we've got an item from Clean Technica. I'll put this picture up so people can see it.
A picture of a post office truck.
Yeah, it's a picture of a funny-looking post office truck.
It is that. Well, the guy is sitting on the right-hand side of the truck.
Yeah.
So that he could fill a mailbox like you see in the picture there without leaving the truck.
Yeah. But the truck is described by a lot of people as goofy looking. Anyway, what do you got for a title?
USPS. That's the U.S. Postal Service.
Yep.
There's 9,250 Ford E-Transit vans and 14,000 EV charging stations.
Yes.
They're putting their money where their mouth is.
I suppose. There's news from the U.S. Postal Service about electrifying its fleet of vehicles. USPS says that it has awarded contracts to Ford to purchase 9,250 left-hand drive regular production E-Transit electric vans and 14,000 EV charging stations to support their use. Now,
they're serious about what they're doing.
yeah, there's been an ongoing kind of a controversy. The head of the postal service is a man named DeJoy, I think, as I remember. I don't have it in front of me, so I might have got that wrong, and I apologize if I have. But he is a person who really has apparently not liked the idea of electric vehicles, and he said that it's not practical to use them. So he wanted to have all the postal vehicles be operating on internal combustion engines, and the fact that the post office would do this is an indication that he's seeing the light or something is different. One of the things that's different is that the electric vehicles the price of them is going down dramatically.
Well, another thing, too, about the usage.
Yeah.
Now, in this particular case, the driver is staying within the vehicle.
Yes.
But if he's on the other side of the street, he's going to have to get out of the car.
Yeah, the post office...
Leave the engine running.
That's true. You can leave the engine running in an electric vehicle and not worry about it.
Nothing happens.
Nothing happens. You don't even use any electricity when that happens.
Not at all.
Yeah. Okay, we're up to Friday, March 3rd, and we have an item from salon.com. Let me put the picture up. This is a picture of a funny looking thing in a setting sun or something. What is that, Tom?
I think that's a wind turbine.
Are you really? Okay. Okay, what do you got for a title?
It'll be a rising sun. We don't know that.
Yeah, that's true. That is true, yes.
Why Republicans are spreading the lie that whales are being killed by wind farms.
Yes.
They'll stop at nothing, you know?
This is a really interesting article. I've got this. I'm going to have to talk to Nolan about this later. Oh dear. I get a note up every once in a while that indicates that something has to be done. Okay. You read the title. On February 19th, 2023, hundreds of protesters filled the boardwalk at Point Pleasant Beach, New Jersey. Their cause was ostensibly to protect the whales. The protest is not supported by science, but is supported by some oil industry interests. And this is something that has just been typical.
That's the key part of this.
Yeah.
Oil industry incidents. Money talks.
Yes, and it's something that just goes on and on and on. And you know, I've been seeing this for years. There is no place in the United States and no technology that is exempt from what are called grassroots organizations that are opposing them. If those interests are, if the renewable energy gets the attention of the oil interests, the gas interests, and so forth, money goes into making sure that somebody is out there opposing them, and it's.
Well, a lot of it's ideology.
Oh yeah. But I mean, do you call it a grassroots organization that is opposing wind turbines or solar power if it turns out that 95% of the membership of that organization is made up of people who work for an organization that supplies natural gas or
Well, it's not grassroots, it's AstroTurf.
I think that's a good way to put it. Yeah, it's an AstroTurf organization. And this thing from Salon, which produced the article that we're talking about, is talking about an AstroTurf organization. Yeah, good term, Tom. I like that. Did you make that up?
No, it was handed to me.
Oh.
My cat gave it to me.
I was going to ask if your cat gave that to you. Okay, our next item is from CNN.
Nice picture of a thunderstorm, huh?
Yeah, it's a picture of a storm, and you know, I've always been very fond of pictures that show the shadows of clouds in the sunshine. I'm trying to think of, I think it was Pissarro, who was a painter in the late 19th century who did a lot of landscapes that had the shadows of clouds on the landscape, and I always liked that. This is from CNN.
Climate advocates are rallying against the Willow Project.
Right.
The White House is eyeing concessions to soften the blow.
Yeah.
And before you go on, I'll explain what the Willow Project is.
Good idea.
ConocoPhillips' proposal, Willow Project, is a massive, decades-long drilling venture on the Alaskan North Slope in the North National Petroleum Reserve,
Yes.
which is by the government.
Yes.
And
Okay.
the area where the project is planned holds up to 600 million barrels of oil. And the short response to that is they want to sell it before it's
A stranded asset.
stranded assets.
Yeah. Okay, let me read the synopsis. Just days before the Biden administration released its major oil drilling project decision, the White House indicated that it may reduce the scope of the controversial project. It is criticized by climate advocates fiercely. The climate advocates don't like this, and I don't like it either. It's
stranded assets that they're trying to eliminate. They want to sell all that oil while they can.
Yeah, and I think that the assets there should be stranded. We're talking, do we need money for our own pockets, or do we need to provide an earth that our children and grandchildren can be happy in? Really,
Well,
that's the decision.
The only problem with capitalistic approach is that it feeds on greed.
Yeah, well, you're right, Tom, but I haven't come across an approach yet that doesn't feed on greed. I mean, socialism feeds on greed of a sort.
It's a different kind of greed.
It's a different kind of greed, yeah, that's right. I had a friend whose wife was Russian, and she told me that her uncle was a chauffeur who worked at the Kremlin at the time that Lenin was running the country. And he said, Comrade Lenin, when he went out in a car, had 5 Rolls Royces to choose from.
I can believe that.
They were all the people's Rolls Royces.
Well, of course.
Of course. But the question here is it's not a question of who owns them, of whose name is on the title or the deed. It's a question. Huh?
Who uses them?
Yeah, it's a question of who controls them. And so, you know, what we need is a way to run a country that is more wise, I think.
Well, we could do crazy things like that here too.
Oh, absolutely, no question about it.
I was once at a convention of municipal utilities, municipal electric utilities in New York State, and the keynote speaker was going to be Nelson Rockefeller.
Oh, goody.
And I was there when Nelson Rockefeller pulled up, and he had an entourage of 4 motorcycles, 3 limousines, or 4 maybe, and another 4 motorcycles. But here's the opposite. The opposite speaker was the governor of Vermont, who happened to have been at that time the very first governor of Vermont ever that was a Democrat.
Oh, really?
But he arrived in a police car and he was driving in the front seat.
Well, that's Vermont for you. Okay, our next item is from the BBC. We have a picture of a tornado.
Looks like a tornado to me.
It sure does.
Californians snow stranded as twisters hit Texas and Louisiana.
Yeah, the last week that we've had has been, a couple of weeks have been crazy, and they're still crazy today. So
yeah, they're having some weird weather down south and in the west.
Yeah, they are. Stranded Californians in mountain areas are desperately digging out after a quote, once in a generation, end quote, winter storm, even as more snow is forecast for the weekend, and that's the forecast right now as we're speaking.
Well, they needed snow, but they didn't need this much.
Well, yeah, let me get into that a little bit after I read the last sentence in the synopsis. In the latest U.S. wild weather, twisters touched down at the same time in Texas and Louisiana. So it was snowing in California, and we had tornadoes in Texas and Louisiana.
And tornadoes are usually a warm weather phenomenon.
Yeah. I went to the drought monitor. If you go online, if you do a search for drought monitor, I think that's all you need. It's a single word. I think it's droughtmonitor.unl.edu, and it's University of Nebraska at Lincoln. And it's a really interesting map of the United States. Tom, I'm sure you've seen it. That map right now, as we're speaking, shows that 40 some odd percent, 46% or something like that of California is in drought, and of that, 19% is severe. In the past, they have 2 levels of drought that are worse than severe. One is extreme, and worse than that is exceptional. And large areas of California were in extreme or exceptional drought, and now they aren't anymore. And the reason is because of these atmospheric rivers that have been hitting California over and over again. But they're going to cause flooding. They're going to cause a lot of trouble. They're going to cause landslides. People are very worried about it. They're expecting 2 feet of wet snow in the Sierra Nevadas.
I hate it when that happens.
Yeah, 2 feet of wet snow is a bit much. Okay, should we go on, Tom, or do you have more to say?
Yeah, we got Saturday, March 4th. We got a picture of a whole bunch of windmills.
Yeah, that's right. On a farm there. This is from PV Magazine USA.
Renewable energy institutional investment has gone from niche to mainstream.
Right.
This is a trend.
Yeah, it is.
Money talks.
Right. While there have been bumps along the road, the energy transition has attracted, quote, an unprecedented wave of investment, end quote. Andrew Redinger of KeyBank National Markets said, institutional investment in renewable energy has gone from niche to mainstream in just 24 months. That's
Well,
his.
this is going to continue because the
Oh, yeah.
renewable energy is going to get cheaper.
Oh yeah, absolutely. It's
What's
going to
happening
get.
as we speak? We talk about it on the show.
We do, and you know the thing is, if you look at the question of what is called firmed solar and firmed wind, which means that they're backed up by enough enough battery so that their energy is dispatchable during the peak demand area
Well,
times.
that's a step in the right direction.
Yeah. The cost of that is barely more than the cost of solar. They're talking about, in both cases, firmed solar, firmed wind, electricity coming onto the grid at 4 cents per kilowatt hour. And people are exclaiming that we need nuclear power in order to run, and they're willing to pay 10.5 cents per kilowatt hour, and it doesn't make any. Yeah. And, you know, some of the big utilities are right on with that. They're saying we're not going to build any more nuclear plants because they're too expensive. And NextEra, which owns 7 nuclear reactors, is one of them.
They take too long to build, too.
Yeah, and they cost too much. You know, there are a lot of reasons why nuclear power just doesn't seem to want to make it. But we should probably go on again.
I think we should.
You want to see a picture of a boat?
It looks like a boat to me.
Okay, I'll put it up. There you go. This particular boat is going to be described in an article at the BBC.
It's the NKT Victoria laying a submarine cable.
Yes.
And it's going to Shetland Islands, which is about 30 miles.
Yeah.
And NKT is the company that owns a ship, and it's called NKT in Danish. Nordiska Cable og Transittog.
You got it all. Have you got a title?
Orkney subsea power link to mainland cable gets the go-ahead.
Yeah, a high voltage subsea cable, power cable to carry renewable energy from Orkney to the mainland of Scotland has been approved in principle by regulators. Power firm SSEN formally requested to lay the cable in 2018, but first it had to demonstrate that to the energy regulator Ofgem that it would be used. So the people who were the regulators here were not going to approve the cable until there was some electricity for it to carry.
That's interesting.
Yeah.
They must have been burnt in the past.
I don't know. There's been an awful lot going on in Shetland and the Orkneys and so forth. Those islands north of Scotland.
If I read this right, they're generating the power on Orkney.
Yeah.
And bringing it to the mainland.
Yeah, that's what they're doing. Okay, should we go on?
Can't dance.
Okay, let me get the next one up.
Got a geyser.
What?
Got a picture of a geyser.
A geyser. That, by the way, is a geothermal power plant in Iceland, and that is not smoke, it is steam.
Iceland has a lot of geothermal power.
Oh, yeah, it does.
Well, it's on the edge of 2 global plates.
Yes.
Right in the middle of the island of Iceland. And so this kind of stuff is normal in Iceland.
Iceland is an unusual place. Yeah, this article is from Alaska Beacon.
West warms to geothermal energy as a path to clean power group goals. Oh, that makes sense. If it's there, use it.
Yeah, backers think geothermal can play an important role in clean energy transition, but they say its potential won't be unlocked without government investments, utility regulations, and other policies to encourage development. Governors in the western United States are getting interested.
What's interesting, there's a little bit, very small amount of geothermal right here in Brattleboro.
In Brattleboro?
Yeah. The housing authority built two units up by the high school.
Okay.
And the new unit is partially fed by geothermal. They got wells.
All right. That's, yeah, okay.
I mean, it's not a giant geothermal field, but it's saving those people energy.
Yeah, okay. Okay, we're up to Sunday, March 5th, and we have an item from CNN and a picture of Central Oregon.
Couldn't prove it by me.
I wouldn't recognize it, but there you have it. It says,
As the West's drought eases, this area remains in the worst on record.
Yes. As much needed winter storms alleviate drought conditions in California and southern parts of Oregon, the deluge of snow and rain in the West largely missed Central Oregon, leaving Crook, Jefferson, and Deschutes counties dry. And that picture is from one of those counties. I'm not sure which one. But looking at the drought monitor today, they're still in trouble up there.
Still in trouble, and in some parts of this, they're still in big trouble.
Yes, that's right.
Well, it largely missed Central Oregon, so.
Yeah.
Let's move on.
Okay, let's do that. We have a really interesting.
A blimp.
This is, I don't know. This is from CNN.
A new generation of airships is taking to the skies.
Yes, other than its enormous size, though, this whale is in quotes, has very little to do with the animal namesake. It's an airship, and French aerodynamic company Flying Whales hopes its hybrid electric helium lift vessel will change the shape of sustainable transport. Other companies are pushing similar products. Now, the picture that we've got is a picture of the Airlander 10, which is not the Flying Whale. It's a different organization with a different product. But there are a number of organizations that are bringing these blimps to market.
When I was a kid, I was in grade school.
Yeah.
Every morning we'd be eating breakfast in the kitchen.
Yeah.
And looking out the window every day, without fail, a blimp passed by.
Really?
Yep. It was coming from the north, going to the south, and taking somebody to work or something like that, but every day.
Yeah. They were used a lot during the Second World War for anti-submarine work. And they were very effective at that. When I was a kid, we had blimps near where I lived, and they were going up because there was a local company that was using them to do tests on speaker systems. And they would read stuff. They would read Mary Had a Little Lamb into a loudspeaker system that was on a blimp. And we would hear this, coming from the sky above us. Mary had a little lamb, and it would happen 2 or 3 times every day, all summer long. Yeah. So, are we set to go on?
Can't dance.
Okay, we have a whale. Let me put the whale up.
Looks like a whale to me.
Yeah, it looks a lot like a whale. I've actually seen whales, and the whales I saw didn't look a lot like this.
I've seen whales, but from a distance. I've seen them spouting, but I don't think I've seen them up close.
I went out on a whale watch when I lived in Plymouth, Massachusetts, with a friend, and we saw 2 adult whales and a calf all together in Cape Cod Bay, and that was very interesting. Very interesting. Okay, this is from CNN.
Countries agree historic oceans treaty to protect the high. This doesn't quite make sense. There's a verb missing. Countries agree that historic oceans treaty. Countries agree on a historic oceans treaty to protect the high seas.
Very good. Nearly 200 countries, that's a lot of countries, have agreed to a legally binding treaty to protect marine life in international waters, which cover about half of the planet's surface.
That's a step in the right direction.
It is, but have long essentially been lawless. The treaty provides legal tools to establish and manage marine protected areas.
Well, again, this is a step in the right direction.
I think so. And,
They want to protect their own territories. That's fine, but they got to protect the others, the high seas as well.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay. All right.
March 6th.
What?
We're up to Monday, March 6th.
We are, and let me put this picture up.
Yeah, 6th. Another one of those funny-looking things.
Yes. That's a
The
vest.
economic case for renewable energy.
Energy security is a pressing issue of our time. Without energy security, we can forget prosperity. The power outages that Bangladesh has gone through recently have resulted from market volatility, but they did give a glimpse of what may come if Bangladesh does not secure its energy supply. Now, obviously, they're talking about securing the supply of Bangladesh. I should mention this comes from the Daily Star, which I believe is a Bangladesh publication. They're talking about Bangladesh, but this is true for every country worldwide.
Well, as I'm fond of saying, money talks.
That's right. And
The case for renewable energy.
Yes.
And it's getting more and more so every day.
yes, it's true. It's true. Okay, we have
Move along.
what?
Let's move along.
Okay, we have an article from Clean Technica, and this picture is from Limon, Costa Rica. And when I see those palm leaves on the left, I'm reminded of the shadows that were cast by trees in the backyards of friends of mine in Brooklyn. And those trees were sumac.
Oh, sumac, yep.
Yeah. Interesting plant, sumac, but these are not sumac. What do you have for title?
Costa Rica reached the highest EV market share in the Americas in 2022.
Costa Rica retained its leadership position within Latin American region in 2022 with a record market share of 7.3%, which, by the way, is very low compared to some European countries. I mean, Norway, it's probably 10 times that. For the all-electric light passenger vehicle segment, in fact, Costa Rica ranked as the country with the highest market share for battery electric vehicles in the Americas.
It's interesting.
Yeah, it is. Costa Rica gets almost all of its electric power from renewable energy, and a lot of that is from hydro. Some of it is from wind power or solar power, but they have been right up there, very, very close to 100% renewable for years.
Well, I've said it on a show before, and I'll say it again. It's not going to be too many years that they're going to look back and say, you know, people actually used to burn things for energy.
Yes, I think you have said that before, Tom.
I have.
I seem to remember that. Okay. We
got
have
a gas stove here.
We have a picture of a gas stove, that's right. And this actually is an expensive gas stove, I believe. Let me get it up. What?
Looks expensive to me.
Yeah, this is from Clean Technica.
Gas stove culture war boils over. What did the industry know, and when did they know it?
Yeah, this was a disturbing article because it shows that the people who make gas stoves were doing the same stuff that the petroleum industry was doing. It's not a surprise, but it shouldn't be a surprise, but it was for me. After a study found that connections between use of natural gas stoves and childhood asthma, it was denounced by the gas industry. But it turns out that the gas industry had investigated the possibility and actually already found the connection 50 years ago. So they were denying.
And they're saying it from the rooftops, aren't they?
There's something wrong with the way that we're dealing with the problems that we have in life. I mean, it's just a matter of money. If it's going to cost you any money, lie, cheat, steal, and kill. You know, and that's what they're doing. And we're seeing that now, happening with the news that's coming out of about the people who do the reporting at Fox News, and the defamation lawsuit that was brought about by Dominion Systems. And what was happening is they were saying one thing in private and saying another thing altogether in public. But and why were they doing that? Because they thought it would cost them some money if they didn't. So basically, they were saying things they didn't believe, as though they knew that they were true. And this is just one example. The gas stove thing is just an example of a trend that we've seen in the United States for years and years and years. It should not be surprising, but it is. So there you have it.
It's a lot of things like that. It's stranded assets.
Yes, that's right. Okay, we are up to a point where we can talk about a thing that's going on. Look at this picture. That is a big solar array.
Big solar. That's definitely a big solar array.
Well, I looked it up. That actually is not a PV array. It's a concentrating solar troughs.
Is it really?
Yeah.
It looks to me like PV.
It looked to me like PVs too. But the interesting thing about this is that array is 150 megawatts. So it's 30 times as big as the one that we have here in Brattleboro.
And it's still not a very big one.
That's right. Okay, this is from PV Magazine.
Spain installed zero. Is that
Six.
a zero?
It's a 6.
0.93 gigawatts of PVs in 2022.
Right.
Why didn't they just say 7?
What's that?
Why didn't they just say 7?
Well, that's a really good question. Now, let me read the synopsis here. Spain deployed about 8,312 megawatts, or in other words, 8.312 gigawatts, of new renewable energy capacity in 2022. Provisional figures from APPA Renewables show of the new capacity, 5,663 megawatts was grid scale, of which around 1,382 megawatts was wind, and 4,281 was photovoltaics. There were, in addition to that, 2,649 megawatts of smaller PVs. Smaller PVs means anything anybody's put on a house, anything that's pending. But
and it makes a lot of sense for a lot of people.
oh yeah, absolutely. This was the smaller PVs also included things that had gone up on schools, that had gone up on commercial operations of one type or another, mines, anything. Self-consumption, they call it. So,
well, people are moving that way just because they're saving money.
yeah, and it's not just people, human beings, it's businesses too. And we have to remember, because, otherwise we'll forget because of the court system in the United States, human beings and corporations are not the same thing. I know the Supreme Court has said that corporations are people, but they have the rights of people, but they aren't people.
They got different interests.
They have different interests. It's exactly right. Yeah. Yeah. Okay, we have an item from Clean Technica, and we have a picture.
How these guys, Clean Technica does.
Huh?
Clean Technica does a good job.
Yeah, I write for them sometimes. I should write for them more. Okay, we have a graph here, and we can talk about that graph, but let's read the
Let's talk about the article and then go back and look at the graph.
Right.
Wind, solar, and batteries increasingly account for more new U.S. power capacity additions.
Right. Wind, solar, and battery storage are growing as a share of new generating capacity each year. These technologies make up 82% of the new utility-scale generating capacity that developers plan to bring online in the United States this year, according to Department of Energy data. Now, I want to point out the solar part of this, about 60% of it is commercial grid scale large, but the rest of it is small. So in addition to that 82%, there's some percent more that is just people putting this stuff up on their rooftops. And
Australia is showing us how to do it. They don't have subsidies for that kind of stuff, and almost everybody that can is putting solar on their roof.
yeah, and in Australia, a third of the people in Australia have solar.
I thought I said Australia.
Oh, I thought you said Canada. I thought I might have heard it wrong. But if you look at the graph, you'll see that the bars to the left are gray, big gray bars. And those bars are natural gas.
Is that what they are, huh?
That's what they are. And the natural gas kind of fell away.
Way down, way down.
By 2006, there was a jump in 2018, but you know, basically it's down. If at the very bottom, you can see additions of coal, and the additions of coal were mostly in 2008 to 2013, and I want to point out that was when Obama was president of the United States.
That's interesting.
During the Trump administration, there were no additions of coal-burning power plants in the United States.
That's also interesting.
Now, Trump said that he dug coal, but the thing that he was really pushing for was fracked gas, and that really buried coal. So you want to take that Trump digs coal, you can add to the end of that enough to make it out into Trump digs coal's grave, because the coal industry just fell apart when Donald Trump was president of the United States.
Economically viable.
The coal miners lost 30% of their jobs while Donald Trump was president of the United States.
Well, it's too labor intensive, you know. It's the past.
It's the past. And you know, if you look at this is something that I looked into some time ago. And what I found was the transition away from coal actually started with the United States Navy.
Really? Well, yeah, they went away from coal a long time ago.
Yeah, in like 1911, they started moving away from coal because they could see the problems that they had with coal. You know, those old coal-burning plants that they had on naval vessels that were used during the First World War, if they were burning coal, that coal in many of those vessels was shoveled into the fireboxes by hand.
By hand.
And you know,
well, I mean, in can we used oil, but I guarantee you that the future of the Navy is a small-scale nuclear.
Now, you know, Tom, we had nuclear cruisers, and they're all gone now.
Is that so?
Yes. The first ones were planned under John Kennedy, and none of them survived into the 21st century. At least one of them was decommissioned without ever having been refueled. And the reason was because the nuclear plants that they used on those things were just horribly expensive to run. But
so they have to come on with better nuclear plants before something like this.
If they're going to use nuclear, they have to come on with better plants. That's correct.
Yep.
And I've just done something funny to the picture here. So let me get this back together. Okay, I think I've got it. There we go. Nope. Okay, I'm going to put up the next picture, which is a picture of the Blue X wave energy converter.
Now that's just interesting. That's not the sea going up and down with the tides. It's the actual wave motion.
That's right.
Going by. And you can see in that picture the waves, some of the waves.
And you can see that toward the middle of that, just a little bit to the right of the middle, is a big knuckle.
And that's going up and down.
That's right. That's going up and down. And this particular article comes from Renews.
Wave energy. storage plant,
Pilot.
wave energy storage pilot begins Orkney trials.
Well, we're back to the Orkneys.
Yeah, we are. That's where we started, isn't it?
Yeah, I think it is. A project to power subsea equipment with wave power and subsea energy storage. That's an interesting idea. Putting batteries on the bottom of the ocean.
That's interesting.
Has taken to the seas in Orkney, and it says Orkney, Scotland. The £2 million demonstrator project called Renewables for Subsea Power has connected Mokian Energy's Blue X wave converter with a Fairloom Halo underwater battery. I'd never even heard of an underwater battery.
I never did either.
This is crazy. Who'd have thought underwater battery? How can you do that? I don't know.
It doesn't make sense to me.
No, doesn't make sense.
Me, but like I have said, when I went to college, we spent 47 minutes talking about batteries.
Yeah. Well, of course, I went to college and we didn't spend any time talking about batteries at all. But I wasn't studying electrical stuff. I was studying other things. Okay, we're up to Wednesday, March 8th. And we have a story from Counterpunch.
Oh, it's a pressure vessel.
This is a pressure vessel. I want to just point out that thing is gigantic.
Well, you can see the other vehicles. There's a pickup truck there, I think.
Yeah.
It looks like up in the front there's a car.
That's what it looks like.
The thing is huge.
And you could park both of them inside that pressure vessel.
Oh,
yeah, there's no way you could deliver this in Brattleboro. It just wouldn't fit under the underpasses. You couldn't deliver it by rail. Nothing you could do to get this thing to Brattleboro or Vernon or any place like that.
You need some pretty powerful helicopters.
Or a blimp. How about that? Okay, this is from Counterpunch. What do you got for a title?
New nuclear plants have turned into money pits. Money pits?
Money pits. Whoops.
Money holes.
Sorry, that 2-reactor nuclear power plant at Hinkley Point C that you thought was going to cost $19 billion, well, it's going to cost $26 billion. Oh, wait, actually, make that $35 billion. No, actually, it's closer to $40 billion. And also, those two Westinghouse reactors in Georgia at Plant Vogtle 3 and 4, well, they're going to cost more than they thought, too.
If they ever complete them.
Well, you know, the first one of those, Vogtle 3, actually started producing electricity in the last 24 hours.
Did it really?
Yeah, I saw that this morning. I went to the NRC site, you know, and they list all the reactors and they tell what percentage of full power they're at. And I noticed that they put up Vogtle 3.
That was a long time doing that. I mean, he started that a long time ago.
Absolutely. They put that plant into their listings a couple of months ago. And the last listing, which they released this morning, it was at 4%, which means that they've started going. Yesterday was at 3%. They had already achieved criticality, but they were not making electricity yet. Now they're at 4%. Maybe tomorrow they'll be at 10, 20%. I don't know, but they're bringing it up. And of course, bringing it up, it's probably going to go offline once or twice as they do that, because it's never been run before. And as they get it to full power, they're going to come to points where they can't keep running it because they've got some kind of problem they have to address, so they'll shut it down and address the problem, and then they'll start over again.
It takes them like a month to shut it down and a month to turn it on again.
Well, it takes a long time, yeah. And with a new reactor, I would expect it to be longer, although you never can tell. Maybe this thing is some kind of work of genius. Who knows?
Some new kinds of nuclear plants, and I don't know much about them, but the old-fashioned kind just ain't hacking it anymore.
Well, the new ones are basically the old ones, same kind of thing, updated. Okay, we've got an item from CNN, and it's got a choo-choo train.
Looks looks like a choo-choo to me.
Except there's no choo-choo. This is a bullet train of some kind.
Something like that. Well, Europe's got some really nice trains. I mean, we're way behind at times here in the USA.
Yeah, I know. Although, if people want to take a trip from Brattleboro to Washington, D.C., I used to do that regularly. And
The train's the best way to go.
yeah, train was by far the best way to go, and from my point of view, because I would leave from Brattleboro, I'd wind up in Washington, D.C. If I went by plane, I'd have to take a car to Hartford, and then I'd take a plane to somewhere outside of Washington, and then I'd have to take, public transit from there to Washington. It was.
Somewhere along the line, you went to Atlanta to change planes.
No.
They say if you want to go to hell, you got to change planes to Atlanta.
Oh, well, I wasn't going to hell. I didn't want to go to hell. Okay. This is from CNN. What do you have for a title?
Europe is trying to ditch planes for trains. Here's how that's coming.
Yeah.
Boy.
Ever since the flight shame movement began encouraging travelers to seek greener alternatives to jet planes, many in Europe have been looking to the continent's extensive rail network to replace short-haul air travel. And there has definitely been... Huh?
That makes a lot of sense.
Yeah, and they've made some progress with that.
Short-haul air travel isn't functional.
Well, I've taken trains in Europe, although I have to admit, I say that having done that 60 years ago, the train system in Europe at that time was way ahead of the United States.
It still is.
Well, in those days, if you were on a train that was going to come through Brattleboro, the previous stop, believe it or not, the previous stop to Brattleboro was Northfield, Massachusetts.
Okay.
I expected you to say, what? Northfield had a flag stop in West Northfield. And
so they had to tell the train to stop.
Yeah, they had to tell the train to stop. And actually, I was living in Winchester at the time, and when I came up, we stopped in Northfield because it was the easiest way to get home to Winchester. And so the train stopped so I could get off. And if I had wanted to get on, I could have had the flag put up so the train would stop for me. That's the way flag stops work. But
I'm glad you explained that.
Yeah. The trains, I took trains in the United States, and of course, living in New Jersey, when I was there, I was taking trains all the time. If you wanted to go from Morristown, for example, to Manhattan, you'd take the train. And the train didn't go all the way, but it would take you to a point where you could get the Port Authority Trans-Hudson tube going to Manhattan. But nevertheless, clearly the trains in Europe were higher quality, more comfortable. I don't know if they were more reliable or not. I never saw any indication about that. But the European train system was pretty far out ahead of the American train system was in decline. There's no question about that.
The people who owned the trains weren't making enough money, so they just abandoned them.
They were not putting money into the trains. That's true.
And now we have Amtrak instead of New York Central, New Haven, and all these different.
I will tell you, I have taken Amtrak to Washington, D.C. many times, and many times back.
It's the best way to go.
And it was always comfortable.
It's the best way to go. It's comfortable.
Cheaper than air.
Car. You can sit there, just sit back and relax.
Yeah, and you don't have to worry about your car being parked in Hartford for a week or a month or whatever. It was, if I went by plane, it saved me about 2 hours over the course of a 16-hour day. So am I going to pay a couple $100 extra to save 2 hours and not be comfortable in the process? I don't think so. The train was comfortable. I enjoyed it. I could sit there and watch. And, I remember going through New Jersey on one occasion and saying to a conductor, how fast is this train going? And he said, I don't know, pretty fast. And I said, we must be going way over 100 miles an hour. And he said, what makes you say that? And I said, well, we're going by an interstate, and the cars that are going the same direction that we are, we're leaving behind like they're standing still. So you figure those cars are probably going 70 miles an hour, and we were just going by them. So
trains were going fast, that's
yeah,
for sure.
they don't go fast here, not in Brattleboro, but you know, when you get down into New Jersey and places like that, they can get, the roads are in better shape and they can get fast.
They go pretty fast.
They can. Our last item is from Renew Economy. And I should put this picture up. This is a picture of a solar plant in Nevada. Nevada.
How about that?
How about that?
Solar takes center stage as renewables and batteries dominate new power capacity in the United States.
Yeah, according to the latest data from the U.S. DOE's Energy Information Administration, 2023 is set to be a blockbuster year for solar, wind, and batteries. The EIA expects nearly all of new generating capacity in the United States to be solar, wind, or energy storage this year. Nearly all, well, you know, it's up there. I wouldn't say nearly all. I would say 90%, 86%, something like that. I forget the actual number. But I do remember that we are expecting to have more battery storage capacity added this year than we are expecting to have new gas-powered plants put on.
Well, battery storage is something that's relatively new.
It's also relatively cheap compared to natural gas. It's cheap.
Oh, absolutely.
And it's better quality.
Absolutely.
Better quality. And if people think that there's no difference from one electron to the next, it's true. There isn't. But that doesn't mean that there isn't such a thing as a better quality source and a not so good quality source. And the thing about batteries is that if the demand changes, they can change instantly, and you cannot do that.
More reliable.
Yeah, it's more reliable. Yeah, you don't have brownouts if you've got batteries, or blackouts, unless something really goes wrong.
Well, it makes sense. You buy the energy when it's cheap. When it's cheap, you sell it when it's expensive. You're ahead of the game, and you're still saving people money.
That's right. Okay, we are at the end of our rope, so to speak.
I think we are.
So I'm putting up the final slide, and it says to all of our viewers, have an astonishingly pleasant week.
All right, I'll try.
So I'm waving goodbye, and I know Tom. Tom just sits there on his.
I'm waving goodbye, but my cat isn't. He's disappeared somewhere.
Yeah, well, the cat usually waves goodbye with his tail, but you know, it doesn't happen every week. But anyway, Tom, what do you have to say?
Well, the last word on my notes is fini.
Yeah, except for one thing, Tom. You're supposed to say, "Y'all come back now." You hear?
I forgot to say, oh, you'll come back and see us now, you hear?
There you go. Okay. Bye-bye, everybody.